You know, my husband has complained about that, so I've tried to make sure I sit closer to the microphone. Because he said, there's times I can't even hear you. So.
Sometimes we don't want you to.
We actually thought.
I'm blamed on the system.
Yeah, that's right. It's the system.
We will see tonight.
Right.
Good.
So did he set it for you and everything? So the key to it, don't touch it once they set them.
Okay, I've got to have a meeting next week.
Oh, you don't start it.
Okay.
Both the CRA and now on the 27th, which is Tuesday, there is a planning board meeting.
Yeah.
So if we did this at 5:30, then you had a commission meeting at 6,
Okay.
and then we could have the planning board.
Okay.
Because I have to have the report in by March 31st.
Okay.
Lee?
I think it's 6:30. I will call this meeting, City Commission meeting of City of High Springs to order at 6:32. The invocation is going to be given by Pastor Tim Spivey, and the Pledge of Allegiance will follow. Will all rise, please?
God, Father, we stand before you, Lord, and we know that you know our hearts and our minds. God, we know that you know all. You're so awesome and mighty and powerful, and God, we're so small and insignificant, but we know that you love us because you gave your Son, because you watch over us and you protect us. God, thank you for the abilities that you give in each and every one of us. Thank you for the vision, Lord, of our leaders. God, thank you for the love that you have shown to us, Lord, and that we can reflect and show to one another. Be with us, Lord, as we seek to please you and give you the glory and the honor. Help us to reflect your Son in all that we do and all that we say. God, thank you for those who protect us abroad. Thank you for those who are watching out for our good, those in the military, Lord, those in law enforcement, Lord, our first responders, those who have our best interest here. Lord, thank you for our community, and thank you for each and every citizen. God, thank you for our leaders. I just pray that you'll bless them with wisdom, Lord, and that they'll do all things for the betterment of our community. Lord, help us to love you each and every day more and more. Help us to love one another and help it to be seen in our actions.
Yes.
Be with us always. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Spivey. Roll call. Ms. Palm. Here.
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 I will hear a motion for, we have a change to the agenda. Attorney Walker is not here yet, but he would like item 3A added to the agenda, the Edgemoor closing. And then B is already there, the resolution 2018-C.
And I think this has to go on the agenda for the CRA meeting and the commission meeting?
Tuesday.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, okay. You're right. Meeting has been proposed for March 27th. Yeah.
At 5:30.
Or 5:45, Jenny said, even since
5:45, yeah. Sure.
Oh, one at 5:30, one at 5:45? Okay.
Right.
So at 5:30, for the CRA and 545 for the commission.
This is to approve the CRA report that is due into the county on March the 31st.
So I'll add that as item 4.
Yeah. That means we'll submit it. It won't go in front of their council till the following meeting.
Do I hear a motion to approve it as amended? The agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meaning, it passes. The agenda passes 4-0.
Madam Chair, since I got here a little late, did you amend
We
it
did.
to add?
We amended
Okay.
it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the
March 8th.
March 8th meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of March 8th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 4-0. We have the presentation of the 2016-2017 fiscal year audit by James Moore and Associates.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Jennifer Forrester. I'm a director with James Moore & Company, and this is Brendan McKittrick, and he is a manager with James Moore & Company. And we are going to present the audit. I'm going to let Brendan first go through the SAS 114 letter. So that's the standard of auditing that requires us to communicate with those charged with governance. And so he's going to go through that letter first, and then I'll go through the financial statements.
So does everyone have the letter?
She sent it to us online. I forgot to.
We got it
I
online.
forgot
We don't
to
have
print it
paper
because it
copies.
was separately.
I'm sorry. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have the financial statement? Okay, so we can go through those first if you want to. and
Now,
then
what you
do it
have
first.
is not the audit.
Not the
financial.
audit.
It's the January.
But
Yeah.
the audit and all that was online.
We
Yeah,
got it all
I know.
online.
It was
We didn't
printed
print it.
Oh,
separately.
they didn't.
And I thought
And I didn't bring it.
And it's pretty, just the letter, I think, would help if we could
Just
get
the
that.
letter?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Can you pull it up there?
Do you know hard copy by chance?
I have one. You could, well, my husband.
And I have the audit. No, I have a hard copy of the
Sorry.
audit. No, that's,
I read it, I just
sorry.
didn't print it.
Just read it to us. We've all read it. We've all reviewed the material online. It was a very large packet, and I didn't print it all out. I have a couple things on my question I printed
Okay.
out.
So I'll go through the letter, and then Jennifer will go through the audited financial statements. So the letter starts out with just some general communication that we want to provide to the City Commission. It also includes any standard language regarding our responsibilities with regards to generally accepted accounting principles and auditing standards. It goes into kind of discuss our plan, scope, and timing of the audit. On the second page, it speaks to our independence with regards to the city, talks about any significant accounting policies which haven't changed since last year, discusses the significant accounting estimates which haven't changed either, and those include the allowance for doubtful accounts, the estimate of useful lives of depreciation for fixed assets, and the estimates regarding net pension liability and the OPEB obligation. We also discuss any significant financial statement disclosures that we think are particularly sensitive, and we just want to highlight, which Jennifer will go through, but those include the budgetary compliance note, the city's deposits and investments, the long-term debt and lease obligations, the pension plan, net pension liability, and OPEB liability, and any recently issued GASB pronouncements. The letter also speaks to any significant difficulties we may have encountered, which we didn't. We did note that the city was very responsive with all our requests. There's a section regarding any uncorrected or corrected misstatements. Really, those are related to some reclassifications, and then also the the net pension liability calculation that I mentioned earlier. There's a section regarding any disagreements with management as to accounting treatment of reporting of items. We noted none. And that's really all the items within the letter itself.
Any questions?
Any
on
questions? Sorry.
the letter? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that oversight that we didn't bring the copies with us. We'll go through the financial statements now. And as mentioned, they're quite large, 56 pages. And this is a kind of medium size because there's much larger governments have expanded statements up to 150 pages, so you can imagine how exciting it is to go through those. But we do appreciate the opportunity to present here tonight, and a lot of hard work and hours went into this, and so we are excited to share it with you. So we have pages 1 through 3 are the first of 4 reports, auditors' reports, and so these are reports that we add based on the work that we've done. And you'll notice on the first page it talks about, or I'll summarize it, talks about our responsibilities in following governmental accounting standards, governmental accounting practices, and auditing standards. And then on the second page, we have the opinion, and it indicates that it's a clean opinion in all material respects. We did not find any issues within the activities that went on with the city for the year ended September 30th, 2017, that would prevent us from issuing a clean opinion on the audit. And then below that, you have the other matters. It talks about some required supplementary information. This is required by GASB, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that we have to include this, and the city has to include this in the financial statements. And then there's some other information that is not required, but it's supplementary, and we have that there. And then the bottom there, the other reporting requirement by government auditing standards, that's the second report we'll get to in the back, and that's mentioning that you also want to look at that report. It talks about internal controls over compliance, which is important, and then internal controls over financial reporting. So you want to, if we have to look at a closer lens at everything with the government to make sure that there's no fraud, abuse, or anything that questionable that we would find in our testing. And if we did find it, we would have to report that to you in that report. Pages 4 through 13 are the management's discussion and analysis. So this is information that's a summary of all of the details in the financial statements. If you'll look on page 13, there's the economic factors, and there's kind of a summary of things that are going to be happening in the future. So some additional grant funding that the city's going to be getting, some additional users that will then come on to the sewer system, and some other things that are happening to benefit the city and that will be happening in next year's budget. So that's the fiscal year 17-18 budget that we're in now. If you'll turn, page 14 starts the financial statements. I want to start on page 16 with the balance sheet of the governmental funds, because this is similar to what you see on a monthly basis from Jennifer. And so this has the general fund in one column, the fire control, the downtown development, or the CRA, and those are your major special revenue funds. And then you have another column for the summarized other fund reporting. I was going to mention that if you'll notice down there if you can see under fund balances, there's some restricted funds. You've got transportation restrictions, and that's your local option gas tax. So you get that revenue in each year. You can spend it on paving or other maintenance for lighting and right-of-ways on the roads. And if you don't spend all of it, you have to then show that as restricted, and it can be spent in a future year. And then the culture and recreation is a new restriction this year, and that's the wild spaces, public places money that came back this year, and so that money's being held for use for that purpose. There's a unassigned fund balance in the general fund of $968,715, so that's unassigned, meaning it's not specifically restricted for a outside purpose. If you'll turn or look at page 17 on the screen, this page shows you the first 2 pages, the statement of net position. That was a government-wide presentation, and that's required under GASB 34. So they made a decision to require governments to, where normally in your governmental funds, if you buy an asset, you expense it, and it's shown as an expense. They required governments to show those governmental funds to look more like a business, and you have to capitalize those assets. You have to record liabilities, as Brendan mentioned, related to OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, and then retire for pension. So these are a lot that goes into the statements of recording these liabilities that aren't actual things that the city owes as of today. It's future estimates of what the city may owe given actuarial tables and estimates and calculations. And so it's something that all towns and cities and counties have to do. It's much more applicable to larger areas like Orlando, where they have a much larger employee base, and they're concerned that they may not be funding their retirement here. The retirement funds do go to the state, and so they are there for the employees when they retire. But we have to do a lot of calculations related to the Florida retirement system and estimate this liability. And so that information there is showing you what fixed assets and capital items were added to that statement and the depreciation related to them, and then the OPEB liability and the pension costs and things that were added there. The next page, page 18, I wanted to mention that I looked compared to fiscal year 2016, and the major increase in revenues was related to intergovernmental revenue, which is government grants and other things that are coming from the state or the federal government. And so that was there was an increase this year of about $275,000 in additional grant funding, and that is a good thing. I know that the mayor or manager, his city manager, I think, and the management of the city have really been focused in trying to get grants that will help supplement some of the capital items that are needed and improvements, and that is a good thing. I wanted to turn now to page 23, and this is the statement of revenue and expenses for the enterprise fund, or the water, sewer, and garbage. And so I looked back over a couple years and did notice that there's been increases in revenue as well as expenses, but the revenue has increased more, and I think that's representative of some additional users, and there were some improvements in the billing system that helped to make sure that all of the revenue for the water bills was being captured. And so wanted to note that there was a positive change in net position and operating income in all 3 funds, and then the positive change in net position for the water and solid waste fund because of the debt in the sewer fund and the interest paid on that. There is there is a loss there in that fund. Any questions on the statements as far as those? The enterprise fund? Okay. We'll jump back to some of the disclosures. As Brendan mentioned, page 31 talks about the deposits that the city has on hand with either with different banks, and so we disclose that. And then page 32 has the capital asset note, so you can see the governmental items there with land, construction in progress, buildings, improvements, machinery and equipment, and everything that is held by the governmental funds. Page 33 has the same thing, the capital assets for the enterprise fund, or the water, sewer, and solid waste. And then page 34 has the long-term debt, so this is important. It discloses the bonds that are related to the sewer system. The water bonds were paid off last year, so it's just the sewer bonds that are now in place. And if there's on page 35 at the top, there's a nice summary of the liabilities for both the governmental activities, which are the general fund, and then the enterprise fund. And so you can see there the capital leases, compensated absences, so that's people's kind of PTO or paid time off, and then the other post-employment benefit obligation. And again, as I said, that's an estimate of something that the city may have to pay in the future. It really relates to the fact that the police and fire employees can retire much sooner than most other city employees, and so there's a possibility that they may stay on the city's health insurance for a longer period of time till they reach the age of getting Medicare. And that potential liability of them staying on the city's health insurance, it's called an implicit rate subsidy. That means that it's possible that the city will have to pay more in health insurance in the future if they were to do that. But again, you don't know if they're actually going to do that. But that's what that liability relates to, and it is a required item under governmental accounting standards. Any questions on that?
The post-employment liability that you talked, all of that you have categorized in the audit is related to the firefighters and the police retiring. Is there any other post-employment liability that we have besides pension? That's all tied up in the health insurance.
That benefit. It's basically the implicit rate subsidy. And so the employee payroll and age and all of that kind of demographic information is given to an actuary, and they actually specialize and calculate and come up with what that liability is, and then we record it. But it is there aren't any other benefits that are included in that other than the implicit rate subsidy. Okay. Then, as Brendan mentioned, starting on page 37 through, make sure I get this right, 41 is the pension obligation disclosures. And so again, there's 5 pages of that to indicate what the liabilities could be. And then starting on page 41 going on to 42 is the other post-employment benefit obligation liability. And the GASB does not require that you fund this. They just require that you record it as a liability and then disclose that information.
Can you explain that to me? Because I read through this 2 or 3 times, and I'm familiar with Florida State Retirement System, but how does that translate to a liability for us? We pay the pension, as we accrue it. How does that turn into a liability? I just need some education.
So it's based on, there's some implicit rate subsidy related to this too, I believe, that there's like insurance and things that go into where, again, dependent on when people retire and how long they would be drawing their retirement, because it's a benefit system where you're guaranteed. Now, I know when you pay in, you don't know how that's going to how the investments underlying the pension are going to grow. And so I guess there's whether it's going to be how long people are going to live. They take and calculate how long people are going to be able to live and stay on it versus how much is in it and how much has been paid in. And then they calculate whether there's a liability or not for the city and whether that is funded.
Okay. And then they had some projections here on years ahead, because I guess we have employees that are going to be retiring that are longtime employees. Page 40, year ending 2019 was substantially higher than 2018 or some of the other years. So is that due to long-term employees retiring, projected retirement dates? Okay.
And once, if you'll look on page 45 and 46, there's some more tables related to this pension retirement, and this is actually so it was implemented in fiscal year 2014. It's going to continue, and we have to add years until we get to 10 years worth of information for pension liabilities that are there. So it's a lot of, they want to be very transparent and provide you with lots of information and disclosure. But, like you said, you do send in your retirement contributions, and then the employees can elect to add to that So it's not that you're doing anything wrong or not funding what you're supposed to be funding, but it's, again, trying to determine what the potential liability could be for people on this, we're drawing from the retirement system, and it's just an estimate.
Okay. So if the fund doesn't do well, then the city has a liability to add to that after they retire? Is that what the liability is? I'm just not clear how it's a liability once they leave service.
The city would not have to pay after they leave, but it's a liability because they're current employees, and it's just trying to capture that information as far as related to their employment with the city and what they would be drawing from the state. Okay. I'll try to get a better summary and find something because it is very complicated, and I'm not doing a very good job of kind of explaining, but I'll get like a summary and maybe email that to Jennifer so she can share that with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Page 43 and 44 are some of the new GASB accounting pronouncements that will be coming out in future years that we will need to, the city will need to address and determine if they're impacting disclosures and what needs to be recorded. If you look on page 50, we get to the governmental accounting standard report or auditing standard report that I mentioned, the second report that we're required. And so this is internal controls over financial reporting. We did have to look at the internal controls related to disbursements, receipt of utility billing, any of the tax monies that come in, and make sure that there's segregation of duties and appropriate controls in place to mitigate any issues, errors, or fraud. We have to look at that. And if we had found something significant, we would have to report that in this report here. And we also looked at compliance. As I mentioned, we have to look over abuse, fraud, and we didn't note any compliance issues with the transactions that we tested and what we looked at for the year. Page 52 is the independent accountant's examination report. So this is related to investments. The Auditor General requires we look at what the city investment policies are, and they are in compliance with the statutes. And then pages 53 through 55 are chapter 10550 of the Auditor General requirements. And on here, again, we mentioned like our responsibility as auditors is to follow the government auditing standards and then to follow the standards required by the state of Florida Auditor General. We do have to disclose prior year audit findings. And so there was one finding that is, again, a finding in the current year, and it's related to the deficit unrestricted net position in the water and sewer funds. And so you can see that on page 54, we mentioned that this is something that is going to take several years to address, and the sewer fund did make improvements this year. The city is not in a state of financial emergency. We have to look at the financial condition and determine if there's any issues there, and if there were, we would report those. And we didn't have any other recommendations or findings as related to that. So, and then there's a response included by the city manager to our finding. Any questions on the audited financial statements?
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we need to vote on the acceptance.
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Okay.
appropriate motion would be to accept the fiscal year audit for 2016, 2017.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make such a motion.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that the acceptance of the 2016-17 fiscal year audit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It is passes 4-0. Now we will have citizens' requests and comments. Issues not on the agenda, please state name for the record. Limit comments to 5 minutes.
Okay, David Lynch, L-I-N-C-H.
I want to give each person
Thank
an
you, sir.
article from the Gainesville Sun.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this says County OK's tiny houses. Tiny houses have been in the news quite a bit recently. And there's a lot of vacant land in High Springs, a lot of land with trees growing on it. And I'd just like to suggest that the city consider building some tiny houses. And I own land that I would give to the city for that purpose if the city chose to build tiny houses.
Very generous. Mr. Lynch?
Mr. Booth, aren't we going to be looking at some affordable housing things within some neighborhoods after we get our CRA director in place and kind of on the ground running? Isn't that part of the long-term plan to look at
It
some?
certainly is, and as a matter of fact, we were out just the other day with Byron and a group that has proposed to do affordable housing. We've also been in league with Habitat for Humanity. We have a lot of lots too.
Right.
And we would like to partner up because we give the lots for free if they put affordable housing on.
Right. And so these tiny houses could be part of that footprint, of the affordable housing. If there's a developer that wanted to, the city doesn't have the cash flow to build houses per se, but works as a partnership. And if your land, if you wanted that land to be part of that, working towards the affordable housing, the city would certainly, take that into consideration when they're working with these people to develop affordable housing.
We have a meeting on the 27th with the Planning and Zoning Board, and I will sure bring this up for their
27th?
consideration.
27th next week? We have a meeting next week.
We do. It's all
Planning
together.
has one. Planning
There's
has
one right
one
after
too.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What time is their meeting?
They're at 6:30.
Okay, so we're in a speed meeting.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Lynch. New business, review of January 2018 financial statements. Jennifer?
Madam Mayor, I've looked over it. I don't see anything that jumps out. We have the funds, the spending is in line. With the new grants coming out, we want to make sure that there is sufficient funds in the bank to be able to pay them for their pay request at a rate of $250,000 per pay request. And then we'll get the money back. But there is a possibility there'll be more than one pay request out there before we get money back. There is also more than one grant, so we'll have a lot of money flowing back and forth. Hopefully it'll be coming in too, but
Right.
yeah, it will.
Any questions?
I got one question. So Jennifer, with Duke and Clay, they always be so slow giving money back? You said uncollected here, especially
Yes,
with
so
Duke.
this is 4 months. So usually the Duke and Clay we get the more money during the summer when it's hot. That's when we get, because that's the franchise fees and the utility tax.
Right.
And so usually most of that comes in from like May, June, July, August,
Sure.
September. So
And they run a couple months behind anyway, so, they are a large bureaucracy.
I noticed that we got, for the month of February from Duke, it was like 5,000 more. So, because we had that cold. Yeah. So, but that'll show up on the next month's financials.
Might be a double during that time.
So I just had a question on the dispatch. We're at about almost 50%, and we're, 1/3 of the way through the year. Do we have more calls happening, or is that a normal figure? The contract services police dispatch, Jennifer, on? I don't know.
I'm aware we may have to adjust that. That just depends on the calls.
The amount of calls.
Yes,
Okay.
the rate hasn't changed. We get, the rate is based on a formula that the sheriff's department uses based on what 911 money they put in, but it hasn't fluctuated a lot. Now, this probably does not include the true up for the prior year, so we'll get anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 credit.
Okay.
But I have known, but see, you also went through all the holidays. So you went through November and December holidays, and I know that they were running a lot more calls during that period.
Okay.
So we're just going to have to, when we do our budget amendment, we may have to adjust that. I'll have to talk to Chief about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? The next item is consider approval of First Amendment to agreement with Swanee River Water Management District for the Camp Colaqua project.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, this amendment is to the Memorandum of Agreement number 15-16-119 between the City of High Springs and Swanee River Water Management District. The amendment does several things. It changes the project representative for the district to Chris Eskelin, and then it gives his contact information. The next item that's amended is that the final report that the city will make to the district summarizing the expenditures and activities will be submitted to the contract manager by August 28, 2018. So it's extending the time frame there. And the memorandum of agreement becomes effective on the date of the execution of both parties and remains in effect until the earlier of August 28, 2018, or the date the district and the city deemed the project complete in writing. And then it has an attached work plan. So the appropriate motion is to authorize the appropriate city officials to enter into the first agreement, memorandum of agreement number 1516-119 between the City of High Springs and Swanee River Water Management District for project funding.
We look to connect in about 2 weeks, Camp Colaqua. A lot of this has to do with the administrative, and I can't say that Tim Norman is extremely fast, so that gives him a little more time to do the administrative side on that particular project.
I noticed that the address is the old address. Is that appropriate?
In the contract, yeah.
And the original agreement is probably what was correct. In the first paragraph?
We can interlineate the proper address. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, that's fine. We just put in our proper address and initial it. We'll be fine.
Okay. Are there any other questions? So it is, can we just vote on the amendment, or do we need a roll call?
I don't believe we've had the motion yet, and the second.
We haven't. Do I hear a motion?
Yes, I'll make such a motion that resolution 2018-C approved.
Nope, that's not what we're doing.
We got that.
It's, yeah.
The First Amendment.
This is the memorandum of agreement.
First
I'm looking at the
Amendment.
wrong one.
Yeah, this one.
Okay, I still make such a proper amendment.
Do I hear a second?
Second, okay.
It has been moved and seconded that we consider approval of the First Amendment 2 agreement with Swanee River Water Management District for the Camp Colaqua project.
And Jenny, we don't need a roll call on this.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes 4-0.
Okay.
Item number 3 has been changed. The first, number A, is Edgemore closing.
And Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I wanted to bring to your attention, the closing's ready to go. We'll do the closing tomorrow in our office. And so everything's fine, and we're prepared to do that. On the title search, there was a issue that came up, and I wanted to bring that to your attention so that you could accept the exception to the title. And what had happened is that the Seaboard Coastline Railroad Company had reserved a long time ago a mineral rights easement on the property. And I've talked to Mr. Booth on it. He and I both believe this will never come into any play and doesn't really affect the proper use that we have for the property. However, we would be remiss if we didn't bring it to your attention and say there is an exception to the full bundle of rights that you get when you buy property, because the Seaboard Coastline Railroad has reserved these mineral rights. And the reservation of iron, coal, oil, gas, and other mineral rights contained in or upon said lands by Seaboard Coastline Railroad was recorded in OR Book 875, page 500 of the Public Records of Alachua County. Now, interestingly enough, they reserved the mineral rights. They did not reserve the right to access the property, so whether they would ever be able to get their minerals off that property is another question. And
Because we're not going to allow them to do that.
that's right. And this is a very common thing with railroads. They reserve the mineral rights, so it's just something that's out there. But formally, I will ask that you have in your motion that you accept the title exception, that is the case in this instance. Then the next item is closing an affidavit for yourself to sign, which basically says there's, to the best of your knowledge, the city hasn't created any problems with title. You haven't gone out and had a contractor do some work on the property such that a mechanic lien would be placed on the property. So that's the next item, which is the closing affidavit, that taxes are prorated per the agreement, and if somebody makes an error or a mistake regarding the prorations, that we'll agree to cooperate and fix any errors in the future, either on the buyer side or on the seller side. That would be, they have to sign that agreement, closing statement addendum, as well as we sign it. The error and omission compliance agreement is another item to be signed, and that's again the same thing. We'll cooperate if there's any errors or omissions with regard to the closing. And then the last thing that I'll ask for you to sign, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, is the closing statement. Call it a HUD-1 statement, and basically it says that contract price was for $194,000. There's $23 of settlement charges to us, and then we put down a binder deposit of $20,000. So we'll have $173,236.13 that we'll have to come up with, and that's all been transferred into the trust account. So it's all ready to go and be closed tomorrow. So that's the last item for you to sign this evening. So the appropriate motion, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, is to accept the exception for the reservation of iron, coal, oil, gas, and mineral rights on the property. And this will all be in one motion: to sign the closing affidavit, to execute the closing statement addendum, the error and omissions compliance agreement, and finally to sign the HUD-1 closing statement. That would be the appropriate motion.
I will make a motion to all of that.
I was going to say it the same way. Everything you said.
Second?
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded that we will, I won't read the whole resolution, but as our attorney stated, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 4-0.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, the last item on the agenda is to consider Resolution 2018-C, and I'll go ahead and read that by title only right now. Is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of High Springs approving and authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application with the State of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Water, and Conservation Fund grant for the development of real property to improve the city's recreational facilities, authorizing an amendment to the city's capital improvement plan to include the project, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-XX.
Well, you've got C on
We have one with C and one with XX on there.
It's in the package.
Yes.
The one you have in the packet was slightly amended, that was the first one.
That's the new one.
The second, you have another one on the dial.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
See, that is the correct number of it, and it actually changed the wording of it. So this one, the X says it's going to close on the second, on March, it's X out. The other one says we've done a contract for it, and that we'll be closing tomorrow.
Okay.
So that's what was amended on it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll read.
The heading did not change.
But it hadn't, but the resolution number did change, Jenny, right? Okay, so this is Resolution 2018-C, same title as read. So that would be the appropriate motion.
Any questions?
What's your plan for this money? What are we going to do improvement-wise? Is this to take the trees out, to put ball fields in? What's the scope of work, I guess? That's what I would like.
So basically what we went for the 200,000 match, and when speaking with writing the grant or applying for the grant, we would include Memorial Park, which is 10.09 acres, and then the 3.8 acres we just purchased as one, and it was called the Memorial Park expansion. For the treed area, the plans for the funds would be to create a parking lot, because we have no parking lot there. That is one of the bigger needs there. If you go out there right now, you'll see that people parked all over the place. The parking lot, potentially, and then the biggest need in our cluster is a baseball field. We have 13 softball fields and no baseball fields, and Alachua only has 2, so a baseball field and lights, and then a playground. The reason why we're going for the playground is, one, that park does not have a playground, so we need to put a playground in there, and that's the second highest need for our cluster to get awarded the grant. And then if we have any additional money, we will look to put a trail through the wooded area, because we want to try to keep as many trees as we can, and engineering fees and any other supporting fees, we have money left. But that is the initial plan. That's all I think we'll be able to get with that 400,000. But I'm working with him tonight. Actually, the grant application is due Monday, so I'm working with him tonight to finalize some supporting projects that we can put down. In the event that we have extra money, we can amend that into our grant application. But as of now, that's all I could think we could afford, would be 100 parking spaces, the ball field and the lights being expensive, and then the playground. So
We definitely need parking there. I agree with you.
Any other questions?
And this money, the matching money, will come from Wild Spaces?
It will.
From our portion of Wild
Yes,
Spaces?
ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
Do I hear a motion?
Well, since I spoke out of turn before, I'll do it right this time.
Right.
And I'll make a motion that Resolution 2018 be approved.
Second.
We do a roll call on this one.
Vice Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Mr. James,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Yes.
Or resolution passes 4-0. The next item is the date for the CRA meeting and commission meeting that we need to add next Tuesday, March 27th, 5:30 to 5:45 is the CRA meeting, and then 5:45 to 6 is the commission meeting.
On the 27th?
Mhm.
27th. Okay.
5:30 CRA, 5:45 commission, and then 6:30 is the plan.
Planning
board.
board.
Yes.
Okay. Do you need a motion for that?
I have a 5:30 meeting with the chamber board that day. So,
Will you be able to make it?
not at 5:30.
No.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I want to make sure that three of us, because we don't imagine the mayor will be here. Okay.
I can make it. I can rearrange what I have. Yeah.
Do we need a motion for that?
No, just
Okay.
a consensus.
All righty.
Mhm.
Okay, very good. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, report.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I just asked Courtney, she's somewhere in Europe, whether she has anything for the report. I didn't want to disturb her, but she hasn't responded, so I don't know.
I think it's in the middle of the night
Yes,
right now. It's like, yeah,
She's going to laugh in the morning when she sees
I
it.
know.
right.
So that's it.
That's it.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Oh, yeah, we've got a few things here. We got to, or the city has to ask the Rural Development Agency for an extension on the pole barn, or whatever we want to call it. It looks like the county is going to extend the rails to trails to somewhere in December. And so for us to qualify for this grant that we've probably spent $500,000 on by this time, but it is, we have to have 360 access to that building by the developers at the last minute decided that was a requirement. And so it will be sometime in December that happens, and then we'll qualify for the grant, which has been going on for 7 years. In one form or another. And actually, we received a check from Senator or Congressman Yoho at one time several years ago. That didn't seem to carry any weight. So we'll, if we ever get that grant and do that pole barn, we'll name it after Jenny or something. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, that's right. In memory. We're going out. Yeah, we're going out for bids for a mower for the park, and partly in that it makes up a shortfall in the $700,000 grant from Wild Spaces. So Robert is very frugal, with other people's money, and so we have to figure out more things to get with it. But a mower is certainly something that we need a specialty mower, especially for the soccer fields. And the way we do it with our contractor, he just runs over it really quickly, and it's not really to the soccer standards. The new mower will do all the fields to that standard, so I am told. I have a problem that came up latter part of this week, and that's mold. We had a report done on the double wides. They're 1970 vintage. At one time, they were part of the health department, and they abandoned them and gave it to the city, and the city took them over, and finally I just shoved everybody over there. But they're at a condition now that the mold, and I have a desist as far as keeping people in there, and I'm looking for solutions. I mean, we have, and I've taken Jenny and we've gone to the vacant buildings around here, looked at the old schoolhouse, looked at maybe building something, and I will within a month have some kind of a solution. The ladies that work out there more than likely will have to come into this building and to work out of it. And the employees they don't work out of that building. They only come in there and have their lunch. We can find them a different place to have lunch, probably in the gazebo or something. But I'll find them a place to have lunch. So that's coming up. And I'm also, balancing many balls because I have to have enough money to pay for these grants. I just can't pull money out and do something, but I have to solve the problem. So I haven't come up with a solution yet, but I'm looking and I'm throwing everything out there, and I will make a recommendation to the board here within the next 30 days. But more than likely, the building department and planning and zoning and that will probably be downstairs in the conference room. At least the ladies will, taking the calls. The guys will be out like they usually are. So, we can store things in that those double wides. They can be our storage, where right now we are storing it at Iron Mountain. We can bring all that stuff back and store it on. It'll make it easier for us, actually. Everything will be here. The last thing in doing research for the First Baptist Church in the planning and zoning 10 years ago, we ran into an item for the chamber building. And the chamber building actually is a CRA building, the way it was funded. It was funded with redevelopment money for the downtown. And so I'm moving that building out of Public Works and putting it under CRA. Doesn't change anything except how it's funded as far as repairs and that. That's interesting,
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
You had a meeting with Swanee River Management District in March about the increased capacity that we're looking at needing in 2020. Do you have any information you can share with us?
Well, yes, I can. It's still a little broad in nature, but we sat down here just actually a couple days ago, and with Tim Norman and Swanee River, and sat there and discussed our plans as far as the grants are concerned. And because we're within that area of the Springs, we're high on the caliber for grants. So they didn't want us, nor did the state, to change the sequence of doing phase A1 and the wetlands. However, they're certainly open to continue now on the expansion of the sewer plant. And the engineers will be here to give you a presentation in the next few months. And what we're looking for broadly is to take our money that we would put against that project and do the engineering now, and then get the money for the construction from Swanee River. And they will make that presentation. So I'm sure that's too general, and they will really fill in all the blanks.
But we're moving forward with a wetlands project that we already have funded.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you're moving them to do the studies engineering-wise so that we can apply for grants for the capacity for the expansion of the sewer plant.
They're actually not studies. In fact, DEP and Swanee River don't like studies.
Okay.
Archer is a good example of a city that has requested lots of money for studies. That's because that's a way for the council to delay making a decision. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if you know something has to be done, you don't need a study to tell you that it needs to be done. This is actually the engineering of the expansion.
Okay.
And then we will take those plans and then execute them with Swanee River money.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we look at, we are still continuing the Project 1A. There's a small delay with the easement, but that's going to be taken care of, and then they'll go out for bids in 2 weeks.
Okay. And then you found the property for the lift station on that project, because that was part of that, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and we have now, and
Okay.
We're getting the easement for it.
Okay. And then Civic Center, where are we at with the renovation?
Should be somewhere next month, probably the first or second week it'll be finished.
Okay, good.
We just selected the floors a couple days ago. There was a problem with what the ladies had selected. And so, because there was non-availability of that, I won't say anything. Anyway, so we went, thank you. We went back to the color I originally selected because it was available. We won't say anything about that either. Anyway, yes, ma'am.
Anything else? Gloria?
I just have one thing. We were about ready to get started again on our sewer construction again.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any idea?
Oh,
when?
Yeah, in 2 weeks the bids will go out.
Okay.
And then 30 days after that, we'll be in construction. We have at least 30 companies at this time that are looking at that project.
Ooh.
30?
Yes.
My goodness. All right. So in a couple of weeks, we'll start on bids. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. I just want to remind everybody about April the 7th, the farm share giveaway.
Yep.
Volunteers be there at least 7:30 a.m. before we can start at 9 a.m.
Now, we have those in the newspaper.
I guess
Yes.
Catherine said
It was there.
Yeah, it was. Yep. Mm-hmm.
that's all I have.
Okay. And I have nothing.
Motion to adjourn. I'm sorry, yes.
Go right ahead. I was going to say just what you said.
Adjourn at 7:30 hour.